Here we go. You're live.
Okay, let's call to order. We do have a quorum. Minutes of March 27th.
Move to approve.
Your second,
I second that.
okay? All in favor? All right. Mr. Pine. Now, your spot, what's going on?
Really no updates. We're proceeding with licensing. I'm waiting for emails back from DEP. That's where we stand right now. I was not at the select board meeting last night, so I don't know if there was anything there.
Yeah, I've not viewed that. Yeah, we'll find probably view it, safe or something. I know budgets, there's a lot of chatter about all the budget stuff, which we know is very funny.
Yeah, and that's what they went over last night was budget.
Yeah.
More items, but
Yeah, so. Yeah, we'll have to take a look at it. Hopefully they haven't recommended to do away with our budget yet again, but. I'm sure for that. Anything else going on in recycle or in solid waste land?
no, we emptied Big Red yesterday. First time? Second time. Second time. It was 6 weeks to fill it the second time.
Wow, and it used to, how many times did you used to do the silver bullets?
Great news.
Every 8 days, so 6 weeks versus every 8 days. That is a ton of savings.
What can you say? Too bad we couldn't have done that. Only a year before or 2 ago. Yeah.
I think there was some miscommunication on what it was and how it would impact or not impact. Okay, updated ordinance. One of the things that we talked about, and I know Brian, you had said to me briefly that Nicole thought that the town could vote for it on
Yes.
election day, but that there was some process or something we needed to go through. And I know we were just passing in the hall, so I'm not holding you to any of that. But
Yeah, so it has to be approved or recommended, by the select board. There has to be a number of public hearings. One of those public hearings must be within 10 days of the election.
okay,
And then updates, have to be made.
okay. That doesn't sound like daunting.
Well, if you get a whole bunch of changes 7 or 8 days out from the election.
Hey, we're fast. That said, we've already had one public hearing, made changes. We've talked about having another one. And certainly we can have a last one before then, and by then, if we've given people 2-3 times to come at it, I'm assuming that there would not be huge changes 10 days before.
I don't. See, I didn't understand some of it because ballots go out, 30 days?
Yeah,
Mail-in ballots go out, I think 30 days prior to the election.
is this all this information from Nicole?
Yes.
I may give her.
And Tina's the election.
Okay.
It seems to me that, they were talking October, but if there's a mail-in ballot.
Yeah, it needs to be, if it's gonna be on ballot, it needs to be on all ballots.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you would have to have that public hearing then in like the end of September, last week of September, the first week of October.
Election day is November 5th.
Yes. Bottom line, we're pretty much done, I mean, that's one of the things we'll talk about. We're pretty much done. I mean, we will have an additional public hearing and there may be some tweaks after that. But Nicole has asked us not to have any public hearings before June 1st meeting, so
Right, nothing until after town meeting.
yeah, so certainly we can have those, but given the amount of work that we've done on this, I'm pretty close to saying it's pretty much a final draft. Pending, of course, any input, valid input, public stuff and that stuff. All right. I'll give a call to Tina or Nicole just to ask about that, because that's really an excellent point. How does it get on absentee ballots about 30 days ahead?
Right.
So I'll give them a call and see if we can walk through that, because that certainly seems like a viable option. I mean, we could call a special meeting. But that's, who's gonna come, people are gonna be voting anyway, it just makes it easier for people. And, so I would think that we wanna make it easier for people, so.
I don't believe I've ever gone to a special town meeting. Has there been one recently in the last several years?
I might have been to one in the last several years, but I know I have been to, I have been.
It's turnout usually
Hasn't
doesn't.
been one in a while.
Could a special town meeting accommodate everybody who comes in this room?
No,
No,
Okay.
I'll do it out.
an old town hall,
yeah,
I went to once,
I remember one over there.
for the outdoor boilers.
Yes, I was at that one too. And as far as
There's a number of people there.
Oh, yeah.
But attendance really depends on the controversy of the issue. That one was,
That was contagious.
it did have a
I was
lot.
watching, that was a
Yeah,
long time.
one was,
Yeah.
poor Pat passed away, all right, I will talk to Tina and Nicole and try to shush that out, because that just seems to be a nice, convenient for the public option. Unless there's something around that we just have not thought of. So. The next,
Can I raise one
oh,
point about the ordinance? I had a thought.
are we there yet? I was gonna talk to we're gonna rules and list drafting and timing final draft, but what's the?
Well, this is something to bear in mind. We don't have to do it right now. But it says that properly separated recyclables
Yeah, we got fees,
without fee.
but we did talk about the permit,
Right, this is not about the,
yes.
it could be, if at some point, depending on commodities and whatnot. Right now, we're just separating sheet metal, scrap
And
metal,
Corrigan,
and corrugated.
yeah,
But if something, number one, plastics or milk jugs become a more salable commodity, that we wanted to separate them.
yeah,
When we want to incentivize that, well, you can do that at no fee, but if you're just putting it in the compactor, there would be a minimal fee.
I think the reason we went the way that we did, all of the surveys that we done, in particular, the 2020 survey, specifically asked, are you willing to pay for recycling? And there was a clear no on that. Now, I think that's different than the permits, because they did also ask about the permits, and people were saying, yeah, we wouldn't mind paying for a permit, $5, $10, whatever, reasonable fees for permits. I mean, the concern about that was people wouldn't recycle anymore, and it's getting, the landfills are getting full, and those kind of concerns. So if I remember our discussion at the time about that one, that's kind of the reason why we went the without fees on the recycled materials. Now, that said, all ordinances can be amended. Those amendments would need to be voted on.
Yeah, and then, like I said, depending on commodity markets and whatnot.
What-
I think that, and we could actually start doing this now, like posting out at Pond Road. You know, last month or whenever you sold the last batch of cardboard. We took in X number of dollars for it. And scrap metal brought us this, would that incentivize people?
That's,
Oh,
that would
That
be,
really makes sense to separate my cardboard versus saving the town money.
you know, Paul, I think that's a really, I know we've talked, and we just haven't started it yet on communication
Yeah.
strategy. That would be a terrific thing to start figuring, how can we make that stuff?
Just something to
Yeah.
bear in mind
Yeah,
going forward.
yes.
If we've got valuable commodities that we can,
Oh, the more we could get for them, yeah.
But was you suggesting that if a person doesn't separate it, that they should pay to recycle it?
I was thinking, okay. If you've got, you know, the bin for the cardboard and the bin for milk jugs or whatever it might be.
Right.
That if you put stuff in there. You know, no charge. But 50 cents or something to dump everything in my compactor.
See, I think that would drive people away.
You think?
Yeah,
I do.
Well.
that was the sentiment from the survey.
But if we put a container out for whatever the product is. It's I believe most people would use it. I think they would separate it and we would catch it going into the other container anyways.
It would be a learning.
Right now, I mean, we monitor what goes in it and we catch cardboard going in there. Not all the time, but we catch it.
And
And we pull it out, and throw it in the other box. And then we let the person know, you know, hey, please put it over here.
right, there'd probably be a learning curve, but the way the ordinance is written, it says properly separated.
Which is open to interpretation.
And that can
Right.
change. Right now, properly separated is
Separating trash.
middle and corrugated. But it could be that properly separated, if the market changes, could be metal, corrugated and milk jugs, or, you know, whatever it ends up being, and that would still fit in there. And that would require, that actually segues us very nicely, because that would require a change to the list or the rule stuff that we were gonna talk about. So, anything else, Paul, before we? Okay, now, I like that particularly as a thought with, I like your thought about publishing what we get back for those when it comes to communication strategy time. So I did I went through and just highlighted all the places where it said list and all that kind of stuff. And one thing, well, a couple of things that I noticed, but the one thing that I noticed is that we were inconsistent. I tried to put in the comments where it said it would be in the rules document. So things like compostable materials does not need to be in the rules document, but construction waste does need to be in the rules document. White goods, not in the rules document. So we were, I think, a little inconsistent. So as we look through there, I would suggest that maybe what we say is, you know, everything that defines, you know, for category, like hazardous and biomedical waste, those can be separate lists. They don't need to be in the rules document, or put everything in the rules document. I think consistency, and then this would be language that would need to be edited in the ordinance itself. So thoughts on rules versus not. It's like bulk waste in the rules, recyclable materials not in the rules. You know, construction waste in the rules, biohazardous and biomedical in the rules, compostable not in the rules, lawn waste not in the rules, trash, white goods not in the rules. So my suggestion is that what we do is we say, you know, be consistent in that and say everything that is a list of a category should either be in the rules or be separate lists. I would lean to separate lists because I think they're easier to manage, but
like rules for permits and stuff. And there might be some reference to certain things like bulky waste in the rules, but it would say see list of
Yeah.
accepted materials.
Yeah, rules has things like, what is our program?
Right,
So our program right now, in the rules that we talk about curbside, which Pat, I can't believe I'm gonna say this, I'm starting to lean a little your way.
I'm going back your way.
All right, yeah. Should move forward, I'm gonna stay where I am.
you've both been very persuasive.
Um. So lists of categories as
Accept-
lists,
Right,
you know, almost addendums to rules, but lists versus rules, which would be, you know, non-standard, well, that's, you know, describing it, saying how this gets changed, talking about some of the other, you know, the fees in it, commercial haulers, that needs to be in it,
So, I guess
recycling program needs to be in it, separation needs to be previous point needs to be in it.
I guess I'm a little confused. So in the rules, you would have solid waste and recyclable materials, but not have it listed out what those are.
right.
Is, and then
See you
it
later.
would be.
See list, yeah, so it would be, you know, and even it's interesting, it, you know, in the definition of the document, it says a complete list of recyclables, so in the rules, it might even say, you know, some of this recyclable materials, complete list, see other, I mean, it's written well from that language. Brian, as you're gonna have a pretty big role in keeping things updated. I mean, my thought is lists only because if you look at it, the rules have some very specific language around being changed, having public hearings, you know, and all of that kind of stuff. And a list wouldn't have that, whereas if we were to put lists in the rules document, in order to change something on a list, it would have to go through a public hearing and all of that, so.
You don't wanna, no. Yeah, you don't wanna tie somebody's hands.
Okay, we all agreed that, I mean, and I'll go through and take a look and just edit the language of the ordinance to say separate lists, well, then I'll use the list language when it's categories. And leave the rules where it says, you know, rules like fees, that should be in the rules.
Right.
Trash removal program, what that is should be in the rules. Commercial hauler, that should be in the rules. And we can reference like recyclables in the rules, but have the complete list outside.
Acceptables, recyclables,
Yeah.
non-acceptables. And is acceptable for recycling and acceptable for transfer station. What it will be once we get a
Yeah.
transfer station,
Materials accepted.
Mhm.
That's the thing.
which is pretty much, you've done all that now in one form or another.
Right.
You know, some of them might not be as updated as we want them.
What the
to be.
transfer station's gonna allow us to do is take it daily. Yeah. It's not really gonna change much on the list.
Yeah,
It's just gonna change how often we can take it.
it will allow us to expand and take other
A
things
few things.
if. It's approved and goes to the select board and stuff, that's what we want the transfer station to do. It gives them flexibility, but it doesn't mean that they have to do.
I don't know that I wanna burden the select board with some things, you know? And some things should be up to the town manager.
Yeah,
I think it's
One of the things the legal people did say is that it really needs to be adjudicated. They did talk about the select board as the adjudicating body.
Mhm.
I think there's some things, like the lists, I think, are things that could change. As long as we don't
That's
put it in the
minor
rules.
change. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not changing the program, it's tweaking.
Yeah,
And that list has been pretty consistent over the years.
Yeah,
okay, I'll work on tweaking the ordinance with the changes so it's consistent. And then I can update the, for this document that talks about what we need. Next thing we're talking about, the rules and lists. Again, I'm more than happy to take a first shot at a rules document. But list documents, Brian, that's something. I mean, there are lists that are out there, but I think some of the lists are a little outdated. It's like, I think one of the lists talks about taking light bulbs, and you don't do that. And
we absolutely take light bulbs.
do you take light bulbs?
CFLs.
We take everything that we used to take over at the barn.
All right.
We'll
I'll,
take a few exceptions, but yeah.
I'll take a look at what's out there, but I think that's something that we're gonna need your expertise to finalize. I mean, we just don't have the expertise on what those lists. I mean, we can talk about what the category of what the list is, but as far as what's on that list, that's you. Because we just don't know.
Why, this thing keeps flickering like it's,
Flickering, but
several
it's still there.
times.
And I'm assuming people can hear us because they would let us know if we're putting some. We did talk, now we've got a couple of little tweaks to the ordinance, but one of the things that we did just talk about earlier in this meeting was. Let's call it a final draft at this point. Select board doesn't want to, and what I'm thinking is that with the changes of, other than the categories in that or not. What we do is we call it final draft, I mean, because I know, we send it to town manager, let her know we are willing to talk to select board at any time. We understand that we don't want public hearings, but we will certainly do that. But I gotta tell you, I think we're there.
I think the select board is gonna look at it before June.
Probably not, but if it's in Nicole's hands, then
Yeah,
it can be whatever.
I wouldn't give it to them yet. I mean, they're deep into the budget.
No, give it to Nicole, but let her determine that.
My question, should it go back to legal? For a final look?
Should we? I mean, we could do that now. Should we wait until the next public hearing in case there are other changes and questions?
Probably.
Because we were talking about doing the public hearing, and it'd be great if we could get it done in June. Do the next public hearing and then make whatever changes and go to legal again and then see what we need to do for this election to get it on the ballot. I mean, we've worked this thing pretty much to death.
So we gotta take May off?
No, because that's gonna come up on item number 5. Yeah, that's a big one. We gotta get started on it. But anyway, are people okay with calling it final draft?
Right.
Now, one thing I want to talk about again. And that is, do we say curbside in the ordinance or do we take it out? I mean, and I know I'm beating a dead horse here. But, I mean, the rules document itself has to go through a public hearing. So we write in the rules document that, by the way, this is curbside program, that's where that would be enumerated. Would be there, and that would change, that could only change after the select board consults with the solid waste director or this committee, conducts a public hearing. Rules or amendment changes have to be publicized by the select board. Yeah, the public doesn't have to vote on it. It just has to have a public hearing.
You're talking about 714?
I'm talking about all the places where it says curbside. There are multiple places where it says curbside. And so it's more than just 714. We would just say solid waste for 714, it's a solid waste not subject to standard collection. I mean, there are other places that talk about curbside. So I don't know, Pat.
You know my opinion, just in the sake of flexibility, I would leave it out.
Paul,
Right now, I would leave it out and just say trash
okay?
program, or whatever you said here.
Again, I like the program curbside.
I think we all do.
Yeah.
There's no question on that. The only question was, we were very concerned about the selectmen just doing what they did, but as we write it curbside in the rules, there has to be a public hearing. And, I'm trusting that we're electing representatives for the most part, and maybe not in every case, but for the most part, that are going to listen to the public.
I think at some point before a public hearing, it would be helpful if we had a cost estimate of what would it cost for the town to take it on in-house in terms of staffing and equipment.
Okay,
So that when people say, well, we want to keep curbside, we can say, well, if we can't find a vendor for the town to do it in-house, it's gonna cost us.
yeah, and we would definitely do that. If you're talking about the public input for changing the rules document, absolutely. Not the public on the ordinance itself, but what
Well,
if
if the ordinance doesn't say curbside, somebody could say, why doesn't it say curbside?
you think what we do is we publish the ordinance and the rules together, so they can see that it would be written in the rules as curbside. Because I understand what you're saying, I don't think we could have a cost benefit analysis for this change. And that's when the public hearing would be.
So it'd have to be in June?
Well, June would be the earliest. I mean, it doesn't have to be, but somehow the thought that we need to do it enough ahead of time if we're shooting for the election for this. So we have to do it enough ahead of time, have to get that input from it, make whatever changes, go through legal again. And then having it help, and depending on what Nicole or Tina says for meeting the absentee ballot requirement kind of thing. Time goes fast.
Especially in the summer.
Yes. And, like we said, it might be nice if we could skip a couple of meetings in the summer, as long as we're making progress, So you're still okay with taking the curbside out of the ordinance itself, but making sure that it is captured appropriately in the rules? That again cannot be changed without public input. Yeah. Now, it's possible that the board could just say, I don't care what the public says, we're gonna do whatever we want to do. I don't envision that happening. At least not unanimous. I don't envision a majority of the board. But Is it possible that some would vote one way, but I think the majority would vote the other? I mean, we could leave it as it is. Which has kind of got both of them in it right now.
Still leave or leave it out of the ordinance.
Leave it out of the ordinance. Okay,
I agree with that.
okay. I will make those changes. And those changes along with the lists, make sure that I've got consistency in the list kind of stuff. I'll make those changes. Finalize it. Send it to Nicole, and of course, copy to everyone. Saying, this is final draft, as far as we're concerned at this point, until we have select input on a future public hearing, we are ready to talk to anybody at any time. Because I know that was when I was talking to the select board about the transfer station. We got some pushback, why isn't it gonna be ready now? So, I want to let people know that it is, for all intents and purposes, ready. But if we have the time, we'll get more input. I mean, what the heck? Okay. Cool. Now comes, this is where Paul was supposed to give you thoughts and ideas. And that is how we tackle project wise. How do we tackle really? Oh, wait, sorry, that's number 6. Number 5 is the application. We talked about making changes to this such that it's a little more substantive as to commercial holiday, not just here's the data we need, but a little bit more about, maybe putting on maybe on the backside of the page, not making it any more than a page on the backside. The following clauses are pertinent to you. You've got to have trucks that have sides on it or whatever. I mean, then we'd have to do this first for what the old ordinance says, which we could do, and then, make another version for the new ordinance. But things like making sure that it's signed by an authorized representative, letting them attest to the fact that they've got adequate insurances to cover. I mean, which could be as simple as, please verify that you meet all state insurancing requirements. And that could be yes, I verify it, and then if it's signed by a authorized representative, then if they don't have it, as the town, we've got something to, hey, it was,
They're on up for it.
yeah, it was shown to us that you had appropriate insurances and you attested to it.
You falsify the document. Right.
Yeah. And right now, this is done, I mean,
Brian, how come you ask for yardage here instead of tonnage? Do they measure by yards and not tons?
Yeah, there's. Some people report in yards, some report in tons. Yes, Martha.
Thank you. Hey, just quickly, clarification, because you guys are talking about communication things. Brian, you said light bulbs were accepted. They are not. I took one down, which was one of those spotlights kind of things that screws into the end of the ceiling. And I kept it separate from the stuff that goes in to obviously the compactor. And I was told that no, it wasn't a certain kind of bulb. So it was not accepted. So there needs to be clarification. And as a regular recycler, I just wanted to pass that information on so that it goes in for the clarification for the communication and marketing stuff that you guys are working on. Otherwise, hey, carry on, and you're doing a great job. Thanks.
Jim,
Martha, do you still have that bulb?
No, I put it in the trash as I was instructed to. I'm sorry.
Okay, without seeing it, I can only assume that it was an incandescent bulb.
Okay, but
and-
you're saying light bulbs, you're not specifying. You just
Okay.
said light bulbs in your meeting, and light bulbs are light bulbs are light bulbs.
Yeah, when we do the list, we'll make sure that it's a little more
That's,
specific.
I just wanted to point that out, because otherwise, this is a public meeting and you said light bulbs, and in my mind, that's a light bulb,
Yep,
okay?
agreed.
Thank you.
We'll just note that when we make the lists to make sure that we're specific enough. So. Would it what if we put, residential units yardage as kind of one block and then tons as another, and
You just have two lines there, one that says tons, one says yards, and
And that's cubic yards, I imagine.
yeah.
we talk about number of dumpsters, number of curbside. Do we ever talk, and I don't know that we need it, but do we ever ask how many trucks they have operating in the town? How many separate trucks? Do we care?
I don't care.
Okay.
Question 2, number of curbside stops. Is there, if you know the amount of units they have, does it matter how many stops they make?
Not every dumpster gets emptied every week.
I think that doesn't that though ask the question, Brian and I were talking about this before you guys came. I think that asks the question,
With no dumpsters.
no dumpsters. So I'm just leaving my bag of trash by the side and I've got some private hauler that comes picks it up. And right now, we're not getting anybody answering that question affirmatively, correct?
Riverside. Riverside picks up bags.
Well, they do, okay. Okay. So we want to know like how many people they're picking up for, so that's what that would be. Okay.
And we want it up for a week, or would it be more informative for a month?
I mean, we just multiply and
You take that week and multiply by 52 now.
Is that a? I'm not gonna second guess how you guys get and report your data.
yeah, I mean, 'cause I want to know what they're doing on a weekly. Not. Or if they're picking up every other week. That's how they're gonna report to me.
Did we say,
Whatever one trip to Bodenham is.
says number of dumpsters serviced during the first week of December, let's say they've got people, because let's just take Riverside as an example. With Riverside, you have the option of having it emptied weekly or having it emptied bi-weekly. So if there's a bi-weekly guy and it's not in the first week, you're not getting that information because they're not emptying that guy. So maybe there's a different way to word that. Weekly, on average. How many? Weekly do you get,
I don't,
Ask it for a 2-week period. Then you get everybody.
approximate number of dumpsters serviced by the hauler in Bodenham. On a weekly basis. During the year 2023. Get them to average it out. I mean, we're saying approximately on average, how many?
yeah, because it's gonna change throughout the year. I mean,
Yeah.
you're gonna pick up customers, you're gonna lose customers.
Yeah.
If we just say approximately how many,
After Christmas,
Right.
not so much when people go away to camp for summer.
we can take a pass at it. And then your expert eye is gonna have to tell us whether we've dumbed it down too much or made it too specific so that
Yeah,
it's.
I
gonna
don't
be
wanna make it
difficult to-
too,
But we don't want it difficult to answer.
exactly,
Yeah.
and I don't want it, I really don't want questions in there about is your truck. Do you have sideboards on your truck or something like
No.
that?
No,
I
let's-
don't wanna get into the habit of having to now I have to follow up on something, you know?
No, all I was suggesting was that we put the language of the ordinance that pertains to that at the back, so they can see it. We're not asking them, but we're showing them, this is what the town ordinance has. And let them take it from there, so you don't have to do anything, but, you know, if they call you and say, hey, I don't have that, hey, it's in the ordinance, you know, can you guys accommodate it? You know, so just put the language that we have in the ordinance, and like I said, we're gonna have to do this twice, once for the current ordinance, which also has language.
Well, I give them a copy of the ordinance,
Yeah,
of that section of the ordinance anyways.
well, we'll just put it on this, make it even easier for them. So. Anything else on here? I mean, like I said, we don't wanna fiddle with it too much, we wanna do enough so that it's meeting the process for legal and.
And that gives you the information you did report to DEP.
Anything else that would be helpful to you, Brian?
I don't need anything else on there.
We'll make a couple of thoughts. And then again, run it by you to make sure that we're not making it too difficult for people to answer, because this is not their strength. Their strength is in operating their business. Their strength is not in, you know, answering DEP type questions, so. We'll see what we do.
It says trucks, fender length wheels, $100 a year. Does everybody understand that's a flat $100 no matter how many trucks you've got?
Yeah,
It's not $100.
yeah, and we're gonna actually take the 10 wheels off of that
Yeah.
list.
We just say, most
have a
of the
tag.
hauler fee $100,
Yeah.
leave the trucks right out of them.
One of the things we do say in the new ordinance is that those fees, and we should probably put an asterisk by it. If we do have haulers that just come in for periodic, that their fees may be different, up to the select board. But if it's somebody like the dump guys, they just come in and do that, do they maybe just pay $50 a year because they're only in a couple of times kind of thing? And we've left the ordinance flexible enough so that the select board can make those choices on advisement from you, certainly. So as we talk fees in this form, we'll just put an asterisk and put, you know, the asterisk on, you know, above represents current fee basis, believes very, you know, fee basis can change based on language and ordinance kind of thing.
You know, you could have scheduled haulers and occasional haulers or something like that.
The ordinance is flexible enough to allow for that if that's something that Brian recommends to the select board and that's the way it happens, so. It's flexible enough to allow for it, or it's also flexible enough to say, no, we're just gonna, the $100 is $100, that's it.
I don't. I just wanna have one flat fee. Like,
Yeah,
if you go to the dump guy's website, Odenham is listed on it as an area that they pick up in.
Mhm.
And they're up here quite often,
are they?
yes.
$100 make it, that's fine,
They're a national outfit,
yeah,
$100 is not gonna kill
no, again, the ordinance is flexible enough so you can do it differently, should that ever be appropriate. It also allows just one, so, but current fees, it's $100 this year. You know, might be inflation and be 125 next year, you know, that's not our call, that's, you know, that's whatever Brian's gonna recommend and the select board chooses. Okay, we'll do slight tweaking here, not a lot, and then Brian, you can run that by you, because that's mostly. We just want it robust enough so it meets whatever Leah was talking about as having some kind of process. I think also it's important to have an authorized signature there so that we can hold people accountable should we ever have to. Okay, now we get to talk about how do we start tackling what we need to do for track hauler for what, a year and a quarter from now. Anybody think about it?
You said Riverside picks up trash bags, some places.
That's what Mr. Acker states.
Yeah, I have not heard that about them.
Apply to our RFP for, they did not
They do not. I'm
try again next year.
I'm wondering whether, I think first thing we need to do is really get more information, and certainly Riverside is one, ask them, and have that conversation. Do you do this? How do you do this? Certainly we could have the conversation with Casella, although we believe Casella's pricing is astronomical. Yeah. I think we could also talk to some surrounding towns that do curbside in some way and see who do you have, how does it work? If they don't, we don't know what we don't know. We don't have the information. And then the other thing we need to do, and Brian, unfortunately, a lot of this is sort of falling you, is that if we were to take this in-house, what would that cost? And it'd be capitalization. You said a trash truck's probably about 30,000, so you'd have to capitalize that. Then you have staff. Is that a staffing kind of position that could be shared with Public Works versus solid waste? So, I know the selectmen talked about having staffing shared at some point. That would be a way to, how would that get staffed? Is that our current staff? Cassie, Jacinta, are they, is that something that is appropriate for, and I don't know the answers to these questions. These are just things that we need to think about, because I think what we're looking at is really laying out for the selectmen, what are the alternatives? The alternatives are, we could go with XYZ, and they would require everyone in town to have a certain trash bin that they would then come in, because some of them that just take it and do it. Well, that was what you were doing.
Yes.
And that's what that would be. And then we've got, ABC company that would, do that. Or, we have these people that, maybe Silver Bullets is something that we put out there. That is an option. Is it an option? But that would mean we'd have to staff. What do you do? Because you'd have, right now we've got recycle staff, but then we'd have to staff for trash too. Is that something that would have to have, is that staffing FTE? Repercussions. But we need to figure how to start digging into this pile. This time is going to go faster than we want it to.
Trash is by volume and tonnage a lot more than recycling, right?
Is it more than recycling?
So I'm just thinking, okay, if we looked at the option for having a central place, everybody brings their stuff, puts it in another compacting dumpster.
That's exactly how Topsom operates.
Right. Just a question of, would one be sufficient, or in a week would we fill more than one?
So yeah, I can get that answer from Topsom.
How many trucks does Plummer fill on a Thursday?
Well,
I think that would fit him.
I think before we send Brian separately to Topsom, and then we have somebody else talk to Brunswick, and then we have somebody else talk to, I think I'm willing to cut this down a little more systematically. Maybe look at what are the towns in our surrounding area, and what is that area within a 50-mile radius? What are the towns in there? And then how do we cut out those towns and call them and talk to them? How do they do their trash program? Who do they use? How do they do it? And get that information rather than just saying, Brian, why don't you talk to them about this one little question, and then, you know, we're gonna talk to somebody. I think we need to get a little more systematic about it.
Does it make sense to talk to towns our size? Because I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense to talk to Brunswick.
Brunswick has curbside pickup, they have a contract with Trevano's and Casellas.
Well, I don't think it hurts us to talk to them.
Hmm.
That, and I think one of the other questions is we might even ask them. I mean, we can come up with your standard questions. You know, Paul, you talk to town 1 through 4. Wendy, you talk to town, you know, 5 through 9. And, you know, Paul, you talk to towns.
15-mile radius is only about 410.
Well, I said 50-mile radius, 50.
Richmond, Bowden, both you're on your own to find a trash hauler. Lisbon, have a contract with plumbing.
But somehow people in Bowden know what they need to do, and I've looked at their site and I can't find it, but they know. You leave it out for plumber, you staple money onto it, which just blows my
Well,
mind. I mean, that's how they do it.
That's if they use plumber.
Yeah, some of them use
There's different services.
Smith,
Yeah.
some of them, you know, so certainly somebody, and I know Bowden town office is not open very often, but somebody down there has an idea of who all works in their town.
Right, Bowden does not have curbside pickup though. Each resident is
Yeah,
to find their own,
yes,
just like Richmond.
but people in Bowden government know who the haulers are that they use, that people use. I mean, they live in the town with people, they have their trash. They know that some people use Smith, some people use plumber, some people maybe use somebody else. You know, we need to understand a bigger what's going on, what are people doing? I think one of the other questions that I would love to, and maybe what we do is we draft out kind of a questionnaire. Here are the questions you should ask when you talk to a town official. One of the questions on there may be, is there any opportunity to pool resources? You know, obviously not Richmond if they're not doing it, but you know, Brunswick does a lot. Is there a way to pool resources with Brunswick? You know, we can be the fleet on the donkey. Big deal. I don't know. There may not be, but we don't know unless we ask the question. So does that make sense that we don't have enough information to really start yet? In my opinion, we don't have enough information.
We should work on, like you said, a
Okay,
list of questions
yeah,
and go from there. As far as pooling resources with towns that are separated by, like Brunswick,
yeah, it may, I mean, I'm just throwing that out. Yeah, it may not be.
and
It may not
adjoining
be all.
town, I could see an adjoining town.
Maybe, yeah. I think it's worth asking the question, if for nothing else, I know that the selectmen are really looking, and they're gonna ask, is there any opportunity to do that? And we can say, look, we've asked all of them, and here's what we found. You know, it's just part of due diligence. So then, do people want to just maybe send me questions? All right, so that's a to do. What questions would you suggest go on to when we call and talk to towns? Then once we get the information from the towns, we'll have a better idea of what vendors to then have conversations with. And what potential models there might be out there that, you know, have a better idea. And then we could figure out what to do that. But the first thing I think is, to me, the first thing's always been, we gotta scan our environment. We don't know what we don't know. So is a 50-mile radius, you think reasonable? Towns within the 50-mile radius?
That's a lot of towns.
Yeah, of similar size or
Well, I
any
think since
size?
Paul's not here, we'll take 5, 5, 5, 25. What do you think?
That's a huge area.
Towns of similar size or towns, all towns?
I would say all, because some might have, I mean, even if it's a big town, it might have information that's useful to us. let's see what the number of towns are and do that and figure out, and maybe 50 is too much, maybe we cut it back. I think 15 is not enough, so maybe it's somewhere sweet spots in the middle, I don't know.
I'd have to get on a map with a string in it, right?
There are other
It
circles.
was 20 miles.
Oh.
What is 30 miles?
I'm going to Google.
Mhm.
You go get your map, you do your map, that's great, I'm going to Google.
I've got a paper map that stays still. We can do that.
I have a paper map too.
Okay, I thought that was straight. Here's.
Okay, so everyone will send questions that they think.
Yep.
We'll try to get them to you before our next meeting.
Yes.
Okay,
Try to.
so that will be our first step, is to figure out what we ask, what's out there. I think our next step after that is probably then, once we have that information, talk to the haulers that are there, make some of those questions. Brian, you're quiet.
I just running all this through my head,
What's your head thinking about it?
nothing.
Oh, I don't think that's the case.
It's-
He's got thoughts. He's not sharing. Is that too much, you think?
No, I just, I don't think you're gonna need to call Brunswick, Lewiston. I mean, these towns have either their own landfill they haul directly to, or they have contractors, like I said, Brunswick uses, they have a contract with Casella and Toronto. Where they're hauling it to, I don't know,
Yeah.
because Brunswick shut down their landfill. So I don't know where they're hauling it to, but it's not local.
Shutting down, yeah.
So that's not gonna be something that was probably gonna help us.
You know what I'm gonna do, if I come up with the 50-mile radius, which again may be too big. I think beside each of them, I'll put population size. So we can,
50 miles takes us south of Portland.
oh, that's too big.
Yeah.
All right,
20 miles takes us to Augusta and Yarmouth. And Freeport.
I'm gonna guess every place that Casella does the curbside, they take to their facility. Would that be fair? You don't know, but I would guess that.
I've seen Casella's trucks everywhere.
Yeah, I know they do come around.
you said Triano?
Toronto's,
They want to put a vulture on the.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I haven't seen them. Have we ever touched, did we send them? We didn't send them an RFP, did we?
we contacted them to haul our dumpsters at one point, and they were $500 or something like that,
Okay.
$550.
I think we're probably gonna find a bunch of that, which is okay, because we'll have done our due diligence. And it may all be leading to, what's it take for us to do it in-house? Which is, I know, Brian, you put some thought to it, and we're obviously gonna get to doing more thought later, so if you wanna, whatever you really wanna kind of dig into what it would take to do it in-house. I know we'd need equipment, we'd need staff.
With the current. With the current increase in taxes and stuff, I don't see it getting
But
passed.
okay, the thing we need to understand and keep in mind. Trash does not come out of taxes. Trash comes out of trash tags.
Right now,
Going forward, we're not talking about trash reverting into overall taxes. Trash is self-sustaining and should, my opinion is, trash should remain self-sustaining. So if we do it in-house, maybe we continue trash tags. The only thing that would stop is that obviously you're getting the revenue, but you're not pulling the tags off and writing a check to yourself. So I think we really need to stop ourselves from putting barriers in our way before we really figure out, is there a way to address those barriers? I agree with you. I don't think that adding it to taxes is a viable option, but it's not in taxes now. Why would we add it in the future?
no, I'm talking about. $30,000 to $50,000 for a truck. You're gonna have to have dumpsters. Possibly another person,
Yeah,
you know,
I would think you definitely have to have another list.
but can you share them with Public Works? Could it be part-time that's shared with Public Works? I don't know. I don't know what Public Works needs are at the moment.
The couple of times that I've gotten up early enough to see plumber come by, I think it was just one person on the truck, he'd stop, run out, fill the bags,
Yeah.
throw them in, run back in the truck. Instead of having a driver and a
Right.
yeah, they run 2 trucks, 1 driver or 1 person,
one truck on each truck.
I think it would add 20 hours for a part-time person. A week, that would, I guess. 2 guys in a truck, 8 hours. 2 guys, 2 trucks, 8 hours, 16 hours, call it 20. That's how it works.
But that's,
Well, like, yeah, you got unloading and stuff,
I think that's something that we're going to have to put,
right?
when we do side by side, here are the options. That's gonna have to be one of the options, and in that's gonna have to be, it takes this much in capitalization, it takes a $30,000 truck. And it takes, I mean, we could say that it takes an employee, but my thought is that employee's salary goes into the new revised trash tag calculation. So that employee, that 20 hours or whatever it is, I think that goes under, here's the self-sustaining trash calculation, so that really the big thing is capitalization of a truck. And it really is, I mean, although certainly the selectmen have input, it's really up to the town. And it's something that's gonna have to be voted on in the town.
Yeah, that would definitely be a warrant.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And a $30,000 truck's not gonna be pretty.
I don't know that we need pretty.
Yeah.
Well,
It's,
We need safe and we need reasonable for whoever is driving. Those, I'm not calling those pretty.
and you want something that's gonna last, you know, a few years.
yeah, I mean, there are gonna be trucks out there. Casella's getting away from their rear load trucks, so there's gonna be a lot of trucks come on the market soon. But I was looking at their truck yesterday and it had 680,000 miles on it.
Wow.
That's all slow.
Right. Yeah, it's not interstate miles.
Stop and go slow, but
Yeah,
a lot of first and second gear.
yeah,
Yeah,
600,
680,000.
had to be,
here. 600 on my top.
it's gotta be a deal, it's gotta be a diesel.
Yes, you're not on the.
All right, so we have, our first step is to get the information from towns. Then our next step is to
Put it in some kind.
talk to haulers and get the info from that. Do a side by side, here are the options, including nailing down a little more about what it would take to bring it in-house. Curbside, and then one of the options needs to be, silver bullet option. Which trash tags would obviously go down quite a bit. And I think if we're doing silver bullet, one of the things I would want to at least discuss is, what do we do for seniors? Who, right now, some of them struggle even, I mean, is that something that we can work with the rec director who's just gone full time because they're supposed to help age friendly? I mean, can they start developing some kind of network of volunteers that'll help seniors
That's a good question for other towns also.
Yeah.
There's towns that,
send that to me? That is, but although it's those of us sitting in the room, it might not be too tough to drive a bag of trash to the whatever facility it is and toss it in. There are people who that's gonna be challenging for. And what do we do? But anyway, all right, so everyone's gonna send me questions. We're gonna try to identify the towns in a 20 or 25 mile radius along with population, so we can figure, do we really need to talk to this town? Kind of thing. I still think that we could get some information from larger towns, but it may not. I mean, we can get the information and say, yeah, it really doesn't apply. So those are our first steps. And then Brian, you're gonna keep thinking about what needs to be taken into consideration if we were to bring it in-house.
Carabasset Valley also has a central location. They just have a dumpster in a parking lot where you take your trash and throw it in.
Well, that's what we used to do years ago when there was the town dump.
Yeah, West Gardner's that way.
Cape Elizabeth, Dartmouth.